More than welcome. We only have one microphone, so if you want to ask a question, I ask you to step forward towards the front here so the panel can hear you. And the panelist that answers the question will repeat your question so everyone can hear it, okay? So feel free to come forward and ask whatever questions you have for the panel.
How do you respond to comments that point out that you are environmentalists mostly, and we have a serious environmental problem, climate change? How do you respond to people who say, shouldn't we go ahead with big solar and get off of oil?
Thank you. That's a great question. And the answer to that question is that we don't respond to climate change by creating the same type of impacts that will create more of a similar response. We want to be able to look long term. I think that looking at these large scale projects is it really comes down to money. Who has the money and who's willing to be able to put that forward? It's not necessarily a sustainable way in moving forward looking at these large-scale projects. And then I talked about the 20-year projected life of those projects. In 20 years, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to the landscape on that 30th year? And in so doing, as we look local, we then begin to look at the wisdom of my ancestors. That was that we recognize where we live, the limitations where we live, and then live within those constraints. And when we do that, we then provide a future for people.
I plead guilty to being an environmentalist, but I think that's precisely the answer, which is that we're going to create another problem by building these large-scale industrial solar energy facilities. We're essentially paving over huge areas of natural lands, destroying the habitat, destroying living things by covering them up with solar panels. And if there is an urgency, and there's an emergency. Obviously, all the headlines lately are about how dire the crisis really is, how we've underestimated the problem, and I think that's true. Why would we then entrust such an important endeavor to these energy companies that are spending inordinate amounts of money lobbying politicians to stop feed-in tariffs in Colorado, California, and other states? It's not a question of just getting off fossil fuels without thinking. We have to be very smart in our development. We weren't smart in our energy processes up till now because we've created a huge environmental problem. If we continue down that road, we're just going to exacerbate the problem. So I think if we could build distributed generation, build rooftop solar, you don't disturb the natural habitat. You know, you're creating energy production at the point of use, which is the most efficient. DWP even admits that they're going to pay Owens Valley less money per kilowatt than they will those in Los Angeles. I can't remember the exact figure, but look on their website. It costs them more money to transmit energy from Owens Valley to Los Angeles. And therefore, those people that are going to get that feed-in tariff credit are going to get less. So if we entrust these large utility companies with our future, I fear we're going to have the same problems 10, 20 years down the road that we're faced with now, which is that we'll have more environmental problems. There's an easy solution. It's a Luskin report. demonstrates clearly that there will be incredible numbers of jobs. Some 30,000 jobs will be created in Los Angeles County alone. So if you have all of this evidence showing how superior rooftop solar is to large-scale centralized solar facilities, why are we fighting over this? It's because these large utilities are lobbying and using tremendous amounts of money to influence the political process. And the last time I checked, we lived in a democracy. And the democracy means the people rule. The people should have a say. And the only way that I think we can counter the money and the lobbyists is by making our voices heard at press conferences like this and by voting every chance we get.
I concur with my two panelists, but I just want to add one thing that we aren't addressing, and that's consumption of energy and growth. And we have to address that because they're going to just keep looking for places. It may not be in California, it could be in spoiled Arizona or Utah. As long as the increased growth and demand for energy goes up and is not addressed, then we're not addressing that side of the equation. And the other thing is there is a tremendous amount of money going into these big utility companies from the federal government to make this happen. And I am old enough to remember back in the 70s when there was the gasoline crisis and there were actually mile-long lineups of cars at gas stations in Southern California. In response to that, something similar happened in the early 80s, and that's when that Kramer Junction facility was built. Well, at least 2 times that I know of, that thing fell into disrepair when the money dried up. Now it's been tarted up because the money's there, but there were notice of defaults filed and posted on that facility. So this is like the gold rush of the new age. And I think we need to address the consumption of energy, that side of the equation, as well as realize that all these companies are not in it because they're benevolent lovers of the environment. They're in it because there is a lot of money being poured into this. So, thank you.
It's partly my understanding that the Solar Ranch, DWP Solar Ranch project down here is partly enabled, maybe entirely enabled, by the fact they have, I think it's 250 megawatts capacity left on their transmission line heading south. And it seems that for future development, that would, that's pretty much would possibly, I think, tap out the transmission capacity to Southern California from this area. And so, looking into future possible projects, do we know anything about any plans for increased or new transmission lines and increased transmission capacity? Do you guys have anything on that that we might not?
I think Mr. Philip Anaya, if he's in the audience, has really researched this. And I would invite him to come on up, Philip. You've got the knowledge. You've been looking at this for a long time.
I'm not exactly sure of that problem. I do know that there is what is called the priority queue list that is that the LADWP has, and there are currently 17 projects on this Inyo Rinaldi transmission corridor, and their total generation exceeds the capacity of 3,000 megawatts, which is going to be the bottleneck from Barron Ridge substation, which is down below Red Rock Canyon, south. Other transmission lines, I'm not certain, that there are any in the pipe. you know, other than what I've seen, okay, in the county's current REGPA documents. So that's really all that I can really say with any, you know, certainty at this point. Thank you.
Can anyone speak to the newer grant that the county has applied for?
Yeah.
When you talk about transmission lines, there's already plans for a whole new system down there going to Barron Ridge. Another connector below that heading south. There will be a new, I'm not sure what the capacity is, but I think it's 500 megawatts or mega whatever. And they're talking about stringing new wire on towers that only have 3 conductors on one side, and that's already in the works.
My name's Nancy Masters, and I just wanted to touch on this question. I am not an expert. I am aware, however, that there are federal efforts, including the West-wide corridor, to put transmission throughout the western United States, connecting them to urban areas. There is a threat of a transmission line coming through the Owens Valley and also coming through Deep Springs Valley, Fish Lake Valley and Deep Springs Valley. That is something we need to watch as citizens, because once transmission comes into the valley, then there will be an impetus to build new facilities to tap into that transmission. We need to cap transmission at what it is today. Thank you.
It's Tom Budlong here. I could speak somewhat to the capacity left in the transmission line through here. The draft environmental impact statement on the solar ranch down there stated this business that there's only 250 megawatts left, and that would either be taken up by the solar ranch, or if that didn't work, the Northland project north of it, as if that would be the end of it. When you look at the cumulative impact statement that they must put in these things, and they say there's essentially no cumulative impact because of this limitation, and says there are no current plans to add any more transmission to the corridor, and the key word there is there are no current plans, and that makes me suspicious. I don't see why the valley couldn't support, as far as geography is concerned, more bigger transmission lines going through here, and that seems to me that if you're a power producer who wants to produce in remote areas, that's what you'd end up doing eventually, and advocating for that. So I'm suspicious of that.
Right. My name's John Rothkin, and I've been doing a lot of research on this. And right now, the driving cost of electricity for the customer is not the production of the electricity, it's the updating and maintenance of the transmission and distribution grid. So that's been that way since at least 2000. So everything in the industry is actually moving towards distributed generation, and specifically towards point-of-use distributed installation. And this is what's happening. This is what is going to happen. The giant plants, electrical plants, whether any type, connected to a long transmission and distribution system, are going away just because of the cost. And the innovation, the disruptive innovation in this is the advancement in the lowering price of the solar panels, which has taken dramatically, which has progressed dramatically in the last 4 years. I think this whole process was started in 2010. If they wanted to do it again, I don't think they'd go this route, just because of the advancements. So I think that the county, the supervisors have to take the brave step of realizing what's going on, and not opening up and making an invitation to industry that's declining. Thank you.
Do you have a question, John?
No, I was the answer to the other question.
I'm Richard Cervantes, past supervisor of Inyo County. And I'm glad to see everybody here and interested in our valley. The real question for me, I don't know of megawatts and all of those things and solar. The question for me is that would anybody have the audacity to fool with the beauty that is inherent in this valley? And we have to be willing, to go to the mat over that. The beauty and the pristine beauty of this valley is the basis for a lot of our livelihood. All of our tourists straight from all over the world come here to this valley. And they come here to go to Mount Whitney, climb Mount Whitney, and go on through Bishop, and then over the pass into Yosemite, and they come every year. And to industrialize the valley is beyond me. How anybody could do that? How dare them even think of such a thing? Ridiculous. A few more megawatts? Give me a break, We can make megawatts anywhere. And the sad part about the whole ridiculous thing is that what they're going to build is obsolete before they build it.
Thanks, Richard.
Any members of the media have a question for our panel?
I'm Darius Moxley from Bishop. I'm a rancher. All this stuff I'm hearing, I don't know anything about your solar project except that I don't want it where it's going to be. I believe we do need solar. My question is, all of these promises that you're getting from DWP about we're not going to put transmission in now and we're not going to do that now and we're going to do this. We have a long-term water agreement that says this valley will be maintained as it was in 81 and 82. They are drying up the valley. We are not getting the water that we were getting in 90, 81, and 82. I'm really thinking. But they aren't listening and they aren't abiding by the long-term water agreement that they signed however many years ago, Nancy?
97 it made it up.
Okay, in 97. But that had to be taken to court to try and get them to do it. Don't believe one word that DWP tells you, because it will not happen unless you take them to court after the fact, after you have already put in this solar project, and then 20 years later you see that it's not working. They're not going to replace it or do anything to fix the valley back like it was.
As well as other experts that are here today to attend the board meeting. So, again, thank you very much for your attention to this issue, and thanks for coming out today.